Welcome back to another Text in Context. This time we're going to look at the next period of study for us in this course, Colonial American Literature. And we're going to try to understand a couple of the factors of this period and this tension that we have developing here between politics and religion. The two major forces of social life in the colonies. We've seen religion with the Puritans, and now we're seeing the rise of a political consciousness with colonialism leading to the revolution. And we want to understand why those two things sort of come to a head and lead to a democratic revolution and the establishment of the United States. So to understand that, we want to look at the Age of Enlightenment as the background and context for the political turmoil of the day. And we want to look at the Great Awakening as the religious context, sort of, that leads to revolutionary rhetoric and sentiment in the colonies. So let's talk first about the Age of Enlightenment. Sort of a chain reaction happens here. We're talking about the early 17th century into the late 18th century, period of over 100 years that things are going on. And we see the rise of science as personified by people like Isaac Newton. By rise of science, we mean an increased interest in rigorous study, methodology, proving things beyond a shadow of a doubt, logic, the rise of mathematics. Newton and Leibniz invent at basically the same time in different places calculus. Descartes invents the coordinate plane in geometry. There's really a lot of major learning advances at the time. And so with this rise of science and the rise of a rising body of knowledge, you get the questioning of major institutions. If all of a sudden you can prove things to be true, you no longer need to accept the narrative that's been given to you by the state or by the church. And this is seen in the work of secular humanists like René Descartes and Rousseau and a lot of other thinkers of the time. And then, so now if you have this rising body of scientific knowledge that leads to the questioning of institutions, you're eventually going to have the emergence of individual rights. And the writer who's probably most prominent on that topic is a guy named John Locke, an Englishman in the 17th century, who is very influential to Thomas Jefferson when he's writing the Declaration of Independence. In fact, Jefferson takes exact phrasings and whole ideas out of Locke's work and incorporates them into the body of the Declaration of Independence, which is the foundational document of our country and a very, very important philosophical work. So that is sort of the background of the political establishment, this idea that people are beginning to question authority, the centralized powers of the church, the Catholic Church, even the Protestant churches, and the centralized power, especially of a monarchy, are no longer being taken for granted. We're going to question those authorities, and we're going to see if people have a right to determine their own course and their own government through these sorts of methods. Couple that with the writings of the day, and you have a couple of them really important long-term effects. First of all, you have this slow, and it is slow, it takes centuries to happen, but it is important, move of power away from the established institutions of the Middle Ages, the church and the monarchy, into the hands of secular power, in some cases elected rulers, and then eventually, more power down to the everyday person. And then you also have this leading to clearly democratic revolutions, most notably our own and the French Revolution that happens almost immediately after that. And then later into the 19th century, you're going to see the unifications of Germany and Italy and a lot of other countries along these ideas. The Great Awakening is something that comes along toward the middle to the end of the period of the Enlightenment, and it really is this kind of correction that happens. The Great Awakening saw the original Puritan spirit of the 17th century is kind of lagging. People are getting loose and sort of less rigorous in their followings, their adherence to church beliefs. So there's a return to religious orthodoxy. There's this kind of re-emphasis on the basic fundamentalist principles of religion. And you see that in the decades immediately before the Revolution, really, the 1730s, 40s, and 50s most notably. There are two figures that are most frequently associated with the Great Awakening. One is a guy by the name of George Whitefield, and he was known for these unbelievably long and preachy and vicious sermons. They called them fire and brimstone sermons, where people were basically told they were going to perish in the flames of hell if they didn't repent. And the second figure that we're going to read from is Jonathan Edwards, similar type of preacher, very much into scare tactics, very much into guilt trips, really a completely different style than we would be accustomed to in our day and age. And if you think about this in the context then of the Enlightenment, as people are learning more and more about the world around them, as people are understanding things better, as literacy rates and science are becoming more prevalent, what are the long-term effects of the Great Awakening? Well, it has this kind of backlash effect. The religious leaders of the time are trying to establish authoritarian rule again. They're trying to say, listen to us, we know what's best, and the people are not necessarily having it. In fact, Edwards is kicked out of his congregation. As prominent a mind as he was in his day, people did not want to hear this kind of thing. So that kind of backlash against authoritarian rule, if you follow that logically, if it happens in religion, of course it can happen in government. And when it happens in government, it's going to further fuel democratic revolt. It's going to lead to exactly the kind of organization and exactly the kind of planning that goes into something like the United States, the revolution against the British Empire. If you think about the Continental Congress, the drafting of the Declaration of Independence, it's all an organized attempt to throw off authoritarian rule, to have a greater say in the representative government of the day. And that is exactly what this period has. It has this tension between the political and the religious that ends in a sort of a new age of man, this modern democratic age that we are still very much a part of today.